Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to everybody who has joined us this morning for the meeting of the Board of NHS England. As always, I need to emphasise that this is a meeting of the Board in public, not a public meeting, but it's a meeting at which the Board will be assuring itself of the work of NHS England and the broader NHS, and also taking decisions which affect the way in which the NHS operates. I would also point out that the NHS board here works in many different ways. We work through a number of committees, and reports of those will come to the board this morning. We also will, at the end of this meeting, adjourn into a private meeting in which we will consider business that's necessary to transact in a private forum. And we've also, throughout our existence, had a strategy of working together to develop our ideas, early stage policies and strategies in something that we call development sessions. So we'll be proceeding into one of those this afternoon when, as a unitary board, everybody sits around the table and focuses on some key issues, some deep dives. And so, for example, this afternoon we'll be thinking about the 5-year forward view and around the operating model and support of delivery of the STPs. So, so far as the formal business this morning is concerned, I have no apologies for absence. We have a full turnout. Declarations of interest. Every member of the board has in front of them a tabled standing list of interests. May I just check whether there are any interests not on that list which anybody would wish to draw attention to in relation to any item on the agenda? Jane.
Malcolm, it's on the list, but I just want to point out the cancer discussion. I'm a Director Trustee for Macmillan Cancer Support.
Good, thank you. Any others? No? Thank you very much. I would also urge, if there are any amendments that you would wish to make to the tabled list, could you please drop them to Leslie so that she can maintain an updated version. I'd particularly like this morning to welcome Callie Palmer, who joins us and will be speaking to the paper on cancer strategy. Callie is our National Cancer Director, so you're very welcome. And then finally to record to the board, although they don't need it related, which is, there will be no fire alarm test this morning, only because it took place a quarter of an hour ago. So that if the alarm does go off, please follow the instructions from our staff and we'll deliver people to a safe place. Let me please then invite the board to approve the minutes of the last meeting. And I have not been notified of any matters arising that aren't otherwise on the agenda, so may I proceed on that basis? Thank you very much. The first item on the agenda is the Chairman's report. Just a few things that I would like to report. I think the first is to record that this is a meeting which normally is a meeting that's packed full of business, because normally at this time of the year we're looking at the allocations and we're looking at planning and operational guidance. What we have actually done, of course, is to cancel the November meeting and have a lighter agenda today, largely because much of this business has been taken forward in time, so that we are now 3 months ahead on planning and operational guidance and contracting round as well advanced. Others will talk to us about that today. That means that our last meeting was actually on the 29th of September, but that in between we had the AGM on the 25th of October, at which it was possible for us not only to reflect upon our annual report, but also to draw attention to a number of areas of priority on which we're focused on our achievements for the past year and our ambitions for the next year. The other activity which I have personally, on behalf of the board, been involved with includes various speaking engagements, which I don't need to go into detail on, and liaisons with stakeholders. One particular one that I would mention is a visit to the Sheffield Testbed on the 20th of October, where, as you know, we are involved in experimenting with a number of medical technologies and giving an opportunity for the developers to try them out in a real-world environment in households in Sheffield. I think here there is some exciting potential for development that could help and affect our self-care programs. Not only medical devices, but also the use of data to monitor the condition of patients. The second issue would be just to report to the board that although our November meeting didn't take place, we did take the opportunity to confer awards on a group of outstanding NHS England staff the Everyone Counts Awards. And I just want to stress how important it is that so many of our staff do go the extra mile for us and do things often behind the scenes. I think one of the expressions that came through so often in the citations was that these were people who are self-effacing, unobtrusive, but just got on and did stuff. And I would like us formally today to commend that. Also on your behalf, I've attended a meeting of the Board of NHS Improvement. I think it's very important that we are not only working together very closely at the leadership level, but are seen to be working closely together. And it gave me an opportunity to understand their challenges, in particular, how they could approach the deficit position in the provider sector and their steps that they were taking. Another issue which I think is worth reporting on is to update this board on the work of the Task and Finish group on conflicts of interest. You'll recall that we launched that earlier this year. We had a consultation process that started in June, and after the receipt of representations, I personally read 900 pages of representations. There was an enthusiastic, there was a strong response, and we have had a subsequent meeting of the Task and Finish group towards the end of November, where we have come to provisional conclusions. There's a great deal of detail still to be resolved, and we are anxious to be able to produce a final report which will come to this board as soon as possible, with an intent to be able to have a consistent and coherent set of guidance across the whole of the NHS, but also beyond to wherever the NHS pound is being spent. We've had fantastic cooperation by ABHI and ABPI so that we can try to intersect what we're doing with what the industry are trying to do, so that we have a commonality of pattern overall. But also to stress that this is not just about imposing new rules, this is actually protecting individuals from the imputation of improper motive through failure to have declared and managed potentially conflicting interests. So it's a very important matter, particularly as we move into an NHS which is much more across silos rather than confined into silos, and where new partnerships are arising in a way which could give rise to those imputations. The other issue that I'd just like to reflect upon is the 100,000 genome programme. As you're aware, I sit as a NED on the board of the Genomics England Limited Company, wholly owned by the Secretary of State. We had a discussion earlier this week with the senior ministers and the Secretary of State on progress. I would say that there are two strands to the programme. One is in relation to rare diseases, where progress from a faltering start has now started to accelerate, and where we are, I think, confidently on the way to delivering the number of samples for sequencing that we were originally programmed to do. Cancer is much more difficult. We are confident that cancer will continue to grow as a major component, but the difficulties are technological, they're scientific, they relate to the sampling, but they also relate to being able to have a reporting pipeline that will deliver clinically valuable results back to clinicians in a time that will allow them to use those results in the treatment of patients. And that, by the way, this is cutting edge stuff globally. This is not merely a local difficulty. We will be coming back to the board in the new year with proposals around the re-procurement of the genetics laboratories, and to build upon the proposals that the board approved earlier this year towards personalised medicine within the NHS. Finally, to report to the board a decision that was taken formally by the Chief Executive and myself under standing orders following a discussion at the Commissioning Committee on the 17th of November, in the context of the continuing issues that we have been having with Capita in relation to primary care support services. The decision that we have taken, and we're now formally reporting to the board, was that we should extend the grace period for inclusion on the dental performance list by a period of 8 weeks. So I simply ask the board to note that. And that concludes the Chairman's report. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.